The wind tore across the plains like a warning from heaven itself. Dust clawed at the night sky, turning the moon into a pale ghost above the desert. Out there, on a cracked stretch of earth, a girl stumbled. Her dress was torn to rags, the hem heavy with mud and blood. Behind her, boots crunched the ground with a slow, merciless rhythm. "Run," the outlaw growled, voice thick with whiskey and hate. "Run all you want. Ain't no one coming for you." She fell to her knees, hands trembling in the dirt. He was on her in seconds, fist twisting in her hair. A slap cracked across her face, echoing like a rifle shot in the storm. "Please," she whispered, but he only laughed, a sound that carried no soul. The lantern in his other hand swung wildly, throwing slices of firelight across his scarred face. Two men rode behind him, grinning through the dust, their horses restless under the lightning-slashed sky. He spat tobacco into the dirt beside her. "This land, your mama's land, mine now, papers signed or not." The girl's eyes burned with tears and fury. "You killed her," she said, voice shaking. His smile curdled. He shoved her hard into the dust. "She was weak, like you." The storm howled, tearing the outlaw's words to pieces as he dragged her toward the waiting horses. She kicked, fought, bit his arm. Another blow dropped her to the ground. One of the men tied her wrists with rawhide, the knots cutting deep. "String her up," the outlaw barked. "Coyotes'll do the rest." They lashed her to a dead mesquite tree, the branches black against the lightning. Her breath came ragged, hair whipping across her face. The horses turned, hooves splashing mud as the men rode off, laughing into the storm. The girl sagged against the ropes, blood dripping from her lip, thunder rolling like war drums in the distance. And the wind carried the outlaw's last words back to her, low and cruel. "They'll rue this day forever." The desert answered with silence. The desert night held its breath. Only the ropes creaked where she hung against the dead mesquite, wrists bound tight, skin raw from the outlaw's knots. The storm had passed, leaving a black sky torn with stars, cold wind whistling through the dry branches like a funeral hymn. She twisted, tried to work the ropes loose. Every movement bit deeper into her skin. Far off, a coyote's cry rose. Long, hollow, hungry. Another answered closer this time. Her eyes went wide. "No," she whispered through cracked lips, voice lost in the wind. Something moved in the dirt near her boots. The dry hiss of scales. A rattlesnake slid across the moonlit ground, its body coiling, tail buzzing softly like death itself breathing in the dark. The girl froze. Her stepfather's words echoed in her head. "They'll rue this day forever." Then his laughter. The smell of whiskey. The heat of his hand striking her cheek. Tears burned her eyes, but she bit them back. She would not give him that. She tried again, straining against the ropes until the fibers tore at her wrists. Blood slicked her hands, but the knots held tight. The rattlesnake stopped near her boot, head raised, tongue tasting the air. "Go," she whispered hoarsely. "Please, just go." It didn't. The wind gusted, carrying a faint light across the horizon, a lantern bobbing far away, barely there, like hope teasing her from another world. Her breath caught. Someone was coming. But the light swayed, then turned, vanished. She was alone again. The coyotes drew closer, shadows weaving between the rocks. The rattler slid back into the brush, tail whispering like dry leaves. The girl sagged against the ropes, chest heaving, strength fading fast, her head bowed. For a long time there was only wind. Then hooves, slow, steady, growing louder. She raised her head weakly. Through the darkness, a lone rider approached, his silhouette cut sharp against the stars, hat brim low, lantern swinging from the saddle horn, rifle slung across his back. The rancher, and with him, maybe, salvation. The rancher reined in his horse just short of the mesquite tree. Lantern light swung in the wind, casting long, broken shadows across the girl's face. She was slumped forward, wrists bound tight, blood drying on her cheek. For a moment he just looked at her, a man carved from silence, hat brim low, eyes hard from years under the sun. Then he swung down from the saddle. Boots hit the earth with a thud. "Easy now." His voice was low, steady as the ground beneath them. She stirred, barely lifting her head. They left me." He studied the rawhide knots, jaw tight. "I see that." The knife flashed once in the lantern glow. The ropes gave way with a sharp snap. She collapsed forward, but his arms caught her before she hit the ground. "You ride?" he asked. She shook her head weakly. He didn't waste another word. Lifting her as if she weighed nothing, he carried her to the horse and swung her up into the saddle. She clung to the horn, eyes half closed. The wind tugged at his coat as he climbed up behind her. "Hold on," he said. They rode hard through the dark. The horse's hooves pounded like a heartbeat against the desert floor. Behind them the tree stood alone, ropes hanging loose, storm clouds breaking apart above it. By the time they reached the ranch house, the girl was barely conscious. Warm light spilled from the windows, a sharp contrast to the night behind them. He helped her inside, laying her gently by the fire. The room smelled of coffee and wood smoke. "Water," she whispered. He handed her a tin cup. She drank like someone who hadn't tasted mercy in days. "Name's Colton," he said finally. She met his eyes over the rim of the cup. "Ella?" Colton nodded once. The flames painted gold across his weathered face. "Rest now, Ella. You're safe here." But out beyond the ranch, the wind carried the distant echo of laughter, the kind, though, that promised this wasn't over. By morning, the sky had turned copper and red, a warning painted across the horizon. Colton stood on the porch, coffee steaming in his hand, eyes fixed on the empty trail beyond his fence. He knew trouble always circled back. Inside, Ella sat by the fire, a blanket draped around her shoulders. Her face was pale, bruised, but there was a quiet strength in the way she held herself now. The dog started barking first, low, uneasy growls that rose to frantic shouts. Colton set his cup down. "They're here," he muttered. 3 riders came up the trail slow, dust curling behind their horses. The man in the middle rode tall, wide hat pulled low, a smile carved cruel on his face. The outlaw stepfather. He reined in his horse just short of the fence. "She's mine," he called, voice carrying like a crack of thunder. "Blood says so." Colton stepped off the porch. Rifle leaned against the rail, but his hands stayed loose at his sides. "Not tonight," Colton said evenly. "Not ever again." The outlaw laughed, but it was a hollow, ugly sound. "You gonna play hero, old man? This land's mine. The girl's mine. You got no law says different." Ella appeared in the doorway, blanket clutched tight. Her face tightened when she saw him. Colton's eyes never left the outlaw. "Law's comin'. Might be slow, but it comes." The man spat into the dirt, grinning wide. "Law don't mean much out here." Colton took one slow step forward. "Then I reckon you best ride on, while you still can." For a moment silence hung between them like the desert heat. Then the outlaw leaned back in his saddle, grin fading to a thin, mean line. "This ain't over," he said, voice low now. "You hear me, rancher? Ain't over by a long shot." He turned his horse with a sharp pull on the reins. The others followed, dust rising behind them until they vanished over the ridge. Ella gripped the door frame, shoulders shaking. Colton watched the trail long after they were gone. Trouble didn't retreat like that unless it was planning to return. The next morning the desert seemed quieter, but Colton knew better. Trouble had a way of hiding beneath the sun, waiting for the right moment to strike. A distant sound reached him first, the rhythmic thud of hooves against the hard-packed earth. Squinting toward the horizon, he saw a figure approaching, saddle creaking, dust rising like a silver haze. The sheriff rode alone at first, hat tipped low, badge glinting in the morning sun. Behind him, the sound of spurred boots grew louder as deputies followed, their eyes sharp and wary. Colton met the sheriff at the gate, hand gripping the rail. "We got trouble," he said simply. Sheriff O'Malley studied the tracks near the mesquite trees. "Looks like your stepfather's gang's been busy," he said, voice calm but firm. "Tracks lead up into the hills, and there's signs they've been circling." Ella emerged from the porch, blanket draped over her shoulders. She held the locket of her mother, fingers tight around it. He'll be back," she whispered. "You're safe for now," the sheriff said, "but we'll make sure he can't touch you again." His eyes met Colton's. "We work together. He doesn't get the chance to strike twice." Colton nodded, jaw tight. "He's ruthless, knows the land better than most, won't hesitate to kill." Sheriff O'Malley dismounted, boots crunching in the dust. He knelt, tracing a broken trail of footprints and spattered mud. "We'll need townsfolk to help," he said. "Ranchers, miners, anyone with eyes and guns. Justice doesn't ride alone." A preacher stepped forward from the porch of the nearby homestead, lantern in hand. "Mercy can guide vengeance," he murmured, "but even mercy needs a hand to steady it." Colton glanced at Ella, sitting by the fire. She met his gaze, silent trust in her eyes. "Tomorrow," the sheriff said, "we strike at first light. We catch them before they can harm anyone else." The wind whipped dust across the ranch, carrying the faint echo of distant laughter, a reminder that evil never rests, and neither could they. Colton rested a hand on his rifle, scanning the hills. "We're ready," he said. Narrator's voice, low and steady. "In the west, law rides slower than the wind, but it comes all the same, and sometimes it rides with men who will not falter." Night fell heavy and red over the ranch, the sky a low, simmering fire. Lanterns flickered against the porch as Colton paced, rifle slung across his back. Every shadow felt alive, every whisper of wind a threat. Ella sat inside, knees pulled to her chest, the fire painting her face in trembling gold. "They're coming," she whispered, voice tight with fear. Colton nodded. "I know. Stay low. Don't make a sound." From the hills, a distant chorus of laughter rolled through the night like a swarm of locusts. Torches bobbed between rocks, glinting off the barrels of rifles. The outlaw and his gang had returned. The first shot cracked across the darkness, slamming into the barn wall with a splintering crash. Horses screamed, their hooves thrashing in panic. Sparks leapt from the lanterns, throwing dancing shadows across the sand. Colton shouted, voice carrying like a whip, "Get down!" Ella ducked behind the hearth, clutching a small Bible she had held since her mother's death. She could hear men climbing the porch steps, dragging boards and shouting insults. One of the gang lunged at the barn door, swinging a crowbar. Colton met him halfway, fist striking, rifle butt connecting with a thud that echoed across the corral. The fight was brutal, raw, a tangle of sweat, dust, and teeth-gritted determination. Lightning split the sky above, illuminating the outlaw as he cornered Colton near the fence, knife flashing under the storm-lit sky. "Thought you could keep her," he snarled, eyes wild. "Not tonight," Colton growled, blocking the blade with a roar, muscles coiled like steel. Inside, Ella whispered a prayer, trembling as rain began to fall, washing the dust into rivers around the ranch. The gang scattered, unsure now, their confidence faltering under Colton's relentless defense. Sparks from the torches lit the night as a standoff took shape, man against outlaws, righteousness against cruelty. Narrator's voice cut through the chaos. "In the heart of darkness, courage rides faster than fear, and sometimes a single man can hold back the night long enough for dawn to arrive." Colton gritted his teeth, eyes blazing. "You'll get nothing tonight," he shouted, swinging the rifle like a club. The outlaw hissed, fury barely contained, and the wind carried his promise. "This ain't over, rancher, not by a long shot." Rain washed over the land, soaking gunpowder and dust alike, but the fight for survival had only just begun. Dawn arrived slow, orange, and bleeding across the horizon. The night's chaos left the ranch scarred. Splintered boards, trampled hay, and the lingering scent of smoke and gunpowder. Colton's boots crunched over the debris as he scanned the hills. Then came the sound that made him breathe easier, the steady rhythm of hooves, not panicked but deliberate. Sheriff O'Malley and his deputies appeared over the ridge, rifles gleaming in the first light. "Hold your fire!" the sheriff called. His voice carried authority and calm over the battered land. The remaining outlaws froze, torches swaying in their trembling hands. They looked outnumbered, cornered, the storm of the night finally catching up to them. Colton stepped forward, rifle ready. "It's over," he said. "You've got nowhere left to run." The gang scattered at first, some fleeing into the hills, others tripping in the mud, stumbling over rocks, desperate to escape justice. But the sheriff's men moved with precision, cutting off any chance of flight. The outlaw's stepfather, wide-eyed and furious, tried to rally what was left of his men. "Move," he barked, but the deputies' rifles cracked in the morning air. One by one, the gang fell into silence. Colton confronted the outlaw, hands steady on his rifle. "You're done. Every life you tried to steal, every promise you broke, it ends here." The man spat blood into the dust, cursing, fists shaking. "You don't know what I can do." The sheriff stepped up, chains in hand. "I do," he said, "and now the law decides." They bound the outlaw to the wagon, townsfolk gathering silently in the distance, eyes hard but relieved. He thrashed, cursing, but there was no mercy left in the world for him, not today. Ella stepped onto the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the scene unfold. Her hands gripped the edges tightly, a mixture of fear and relief in her eyes. Colton placed a protective hand on her shoulder. Narrator's voice rose, steady and solemn. "Justice rides in slow, patient steps, and sometimes the dawn only arrives after a long, desperate night, but it always comes." The outlaw was loaded into the sheriff's wagon, the sound of creaking wood marking the end of his terror. Colton and Ella watched as the hills swallowed the remnants of the gang, silence settling like a soft blanket over the ranch. Colton exhaled, shoulders loosening. "It's finally done." And for the first time in days, the wind carried only peace.